The reality show The Pawn Stars follows 3 generations of Harrison men, their wacky family friend, and a group of subject matter experts as they cope with each other and their families. The History Channel has hit a home run, yet success in business does not imply perfection, as they have been ripped off by their own clients on several occasions. So, in today's video, we will show you the times when the Pawn Stars got ripped off terribly. So, let's roll. Signed by Napoleon himself.
This is a letter signed by Napoleon himself.
That's really cool.
I've been told by my wife that I had a bit of a Napoleon complex.
I can see that.
One of the Pawn Stars and co-owner of Gold and Silver Pawn Shop in Las Vegas, Corey Harrison, bought what seemed to be a hand-signed proclamation Napoleon issued after the legendary Battle of Austerlitz on one of the show's episodes. A customer had purchased the ostensibly special piece of history online and was looking to sell it for some more cash. Basically, regular Harrison fare. The asking price was $10,000. Harrison negotiated a price of $2,000 with him, but Harrison approached Brown for a historical perspective only after completing the purchase. The Battle of Austerlitz is regarded as one of Napoleon's most significant triumphs. It pitted Napoleon's Grand Army against the Russo-Austrian army in the winter of 1805.
Napoleon and this Grand Army of France were fighting against Austria or the Habsburg Empire.
According to Brown, Napoleon's novel battle tactics and maneuvering, which essentially allowed his army to split the enemy to obtain victory, contributed to the conflict's historical significance, and Brown was requested to certify the proclamation of the handwritten piece of history Napoleon handed out to soldiers on the battlefield following the French victory. Things went bad, because it wasn't an original text copy.
This is not one of those original manuscript copies.
Ooh.
The reason for this is that a handwritten paper would have displayed more ink pattern difference, among other factors. The original was kept at a military repository near Paris.
What we consider to be the original, which looks exactly like this, that's in the military museum just outside of Paris.
According to the show, the Pawn Stars copy is now in a trash can in downtown Las Vegas. P.S. If you're thinking about purchasing a piece of history, consult a historian first.
This is it, man. It's supposed to be an original document signed by Napoleon.
Box of comic books.
I have my uncle's comic book collection. He passed away and this was handed down to me.
Determining the value of a comic book or comic book collection can be difficult. Are those stacks of old comics sat collecting dust in the attic worth anything? Is there something in your collection that will have avid collectors tripping over themselves to buy? And even though Chumlee is a relatively competent businessman in real life, the Pawn Star is still known as the show's charming fool, and it sometimes appears that he is attempting to uphold this reputation. Chumlee looks to be making some terrible choices at the shop more often, and one of them occurred during a season 15 episode when he made a rather bad bet on a value of 7 boxes of vintage comic books that the seller had originally demanded $2,000 for.
I'd like to get $2,000.
Before striking a deal with Chumlee for $500.
I'm gonna do the 500. I'm gonna show everyone what an expert I really am.
I know there's gonna be some good stuff in here.
But when it comes to buying them, there are many factors to consider when it comes to deciding whether your vintage comic books are worth anything. This includes, but isn't limited to, the condition that your comics are in and when they were first published. However, if your comics aren't in the best physical condition, then don't fret too much. So being in the biz, Chumlee had it all down. And after an expert checked the comics out, he came to the conclusion that they would sell for about $200. Only if the Pawn Stars were lucky, naturally.
All right, the big question, what are they worth?
This stack I pulled is probably $200 retail.
And the other couple hundred pounds of comic books are worth?
5 cents a book if you're lucky.
So Rick was pretty angry about the whole thing, as the whole bunch was basically worthless.
In a couple years, I might get my money back.
Hey, sometimes investments are made over the long run. You kids these days want all this instant satisfaction.
Fake Gibson.
I bought a Gibson mandolin, but it turned out not to be real.
Okay, this is one of the funniest. A guy came in with a cheap-looking Mando with Gibson on the headstock and asked for $3,000.
What are you trying to get for
Well,
it?
I'd like to get $3,000 out of it if I could.
Even though we know very little, we could tell it was worth less than $150. One of the shop's less experienced employees paid $1,500 for it.
$1,500, and we got a deal.
15 sounds fair. I can make a
15?
profit.
All right, that sounds good. I appreciate it.
Then took it to a guitar shop to discover it was a fake. Ouch!
Yeah. This is fake as hell, man.
So the whole thing happened. While they forced the stupid village fool Chum Lee to make the buy on his own without gaining approval from higher-ups for spending more over his limit, $1,000, it was a typical pawn shop purchase of the bogus Gibsons that seemed to be flooding the Midwest and Western states by the hundreds. It was most likely classified as an A5 with a phony serial number on the fake Gibson label. A second-hand true A5 Gibson from the 1980s to 90s might pawn for $1,500 and sell for $2,500, earning the Chum praise for his keen purchasing skills. Not! The absence of a case was the first red flag. The gleaming plastic polymer finish screamed false in your face. And another telltale clue is the inexpensive tuners, pickguard, bridge, and tailpiece. Another indicator is the fake, the Gibson decal. While we hoped it was real, they should have shown how they can go back on the receipt and get his name and address and his driver's license and track him down to get the money back, as that would be a better story than seeing the Chum sitting out front strumming the mandolin, not even close to being in tune, begging for money to get the $1,500 he blew back.
Oh, I need some money. No money for me.
Cubic zirconia.
It's a kunzite.
A kunzite.
Kunzite.
You sure it's just not a fancy piece of glass?
Richard Harrison is known as the Old Man, and his age and experience has given him a plethora of knowledge when it comes to buying and selling precious items. Unfortunately for him, obtaining that information sometimes came at a high price. As they say, you learn from your mistakes, and he learned a costly lesson when cubic zirconia first hit the market in the 1970s. At the time, few people had heard of these bright, low-cost synthetic jewels, let alone knew how to tell them apart from real diamonds. Fake diamonds, according to the late great Richard Harrison, have cheated him the most. Many a pawn shop was tricked when cubic zirconia, a synthetic diamond doppelganger, first hit the market in the late 1970s and early 80s. In a 2010 History Channel broadcast, Harrison claimed, quote, "Nobody knew about these, and they tested as diamonds."
When you're looking at a CZ or a fake diamond, they're too perfect.
Everyone in the business bought a lot of them. He claimed to have squandered nearly $30,000. Cubic zirconias aren't a major issue in today's pawn shop. In 2009, Corey Big Hoss Harrison, the old man's grandson, filmed a DIY video for the History Channel called How to Spot a Fake Diamond. To put it another way, the fake pebbles are too flawless. Before we go on to the last part of our list, we'd love to hear your thoughts on today's video, as well as if you have any other favorite shows that you'd like to see on our channel.
And as I can see through here, it has the right refractive index to be kunzite. So yes, this is
A real kunzite.
John Lennon artwork.
I have some original John Lennon artwork to sell. The John Lennon? The John Lennon.
John Lennon was an outstanding artist, as well as one of the finest songwriters in music history. His work is instantly recognizable, particularly his self-portrait doodles. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that a seller went into the gold and silver pawn shop with a jumble of doodles that resemble John Lennon's most famous work, a clumsily hand-drawn self-portrait. It's also signed, which the proprietor claims to have obtained from a thrift store of all places. There's a reason it's in a thrift store rather than in someone's private collection. The seller found it hanging in a thrift shop and bought it for $10. Total steal.
Glad I didn't pay much for it.
How much you pay for it?
$10.
Now he was hoping it was worth $20,000 at the pawn shop.
And how much you want for it?
$20,000.
$20,000.
While Nick called the find neat, he immediately spotted a problem with the alleged artifact. From the back, he can tell it's been printed on Kodak printer paper, which didn't even exist at the time of Lennon's tragic death in 1980.
Kodak computer paper. He passed away in 1980. This type of paper didn't exist in 1980.
So, while it's cool, unfortunately for the owner, it's also a complete fake. So this time, the famous Pawn Star missed being ripped off by an inch. Trying to stay optimistic about the bust, the seller said that he was glad he didn't pay a lot for it in the first place. Thank you very much for watching the video. Do like and share it with your friends. Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to not miss any of the upcoming amazing videos. Thank you once again